everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of
Hey Yo
Radio. My name is Mark Dickenweiss. I'm joined by Scott Tyson, and this week we'll see how we did with our predictions from last weekend's WWE Backlash pay-per-view, and once again profile another former NXT talent. So with that said, what's going on, Scott? How you doing tonight?
Mark, I'm doing fantastic. I cannot wait to profile our next personality.
So this week, we're going to dive headfirst in the NXT career of, and please don't ever call him an artist or Shin. That's right, this episode we're jumping back to 2016 and looking at the career of the King of Strong Style, Shinsuke Nakamura. So that's his first theme music. It's called The Rising Sun. It's done by CFOs. I absolutely love it. I know I come on here each week and I'm like, oh, I love this music. Oh, I love this music. But this one was a lot of fun. It fit the character very well, and the crowd ate it all up too. During his run in NXT, people would sing along with it. Da, 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 da. It was a lot of fun. I can remember going to a house show that he performed at, and just loving taking part in that. It made for a very fun atmosphere.
No, it absolutely did, and NXT finds a way when they have an idea of where they want their character to go. They find music that fits the character. They've done an excellent job with that. I know wrestling albums and titles aren't released as often, but they've done some really good work. CFO did some really good work there in NXT with talents. Yeah,
they certainly did. There's a lot of stuff, and we'll be hitting on a lot of those CFO's musics in the future episodes. But so let's get into it. Shinsuke Nakamura, born in Minayama, Kyoto, Japan, on February 24th, 1980. He grew up idolizing Jushin Thunder Liger, which is kind of cool. I remember watching Liger on WCW television, so it's kind of cool thinking that that Shinsuke's really that young, you know. At least I got a kick out of that. But yeah, Liger's been wrestling a long time, so it makes sense.
It does, and it's interesting how his ring style evolved versus that of Jushin Liger, who was very much the prototypical light heavyweight.
Yeah, it's vastly different.
It is, but you know what? There's been a lot of guys how many people have said that, they grew up idolizing Ric Flair, and their moveset, their build, their characters were nothing like him. I mean, it's just, hey, that's what wrestling's built on. Wrestling fans make some of the best wrestlers that you'll ever see.
Mm-hmm.
Even in Japan, it's the same way, and probably even more so over there because it's so revered and treated like a sport still to this day in a lot of places.
Yeah.
That it's a lot different than it's looked at over here.
Oh, that's for sure. Yeah. So he began his training in the Inoki Dojo. Shinsuke began a wrestling career that also includes a few MMA fights for the K1 promotion in Japan from 2002 to 2004. Interesting to note, a friend of mine at the time was a big MMA fan. He's the one who got me into the sport. Chances are I actually saw Shinsuke fight at about 2 a.m. on one of those fights back in K1.
Really?
Back around that time. But I didn't know who he was at all. But yeah, I do remember staying up real late to watch those Japanese K1 shows. And not that I really remember any of the names from any of the shows, but I'm sure he was probably one of the guys because time-wise, it just lines up. So it's just kind of weird. I was.
He doesn't really strike me as and he doesn't really strike me as an MMA type fighter. But there you go.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of guys, a lot of guys from that era did that a little bit on the side. I mean, he only had 5 matches. His MMA record was 3-1-1, earning 3 victories via submission. and his only loss was came at the hands of Daniel Gracie. So Gracie is a big name in the world of MMA. So that's nothing to be down about.
And bringing this full circle, you referenced Jushin Thunder Liger as his idol, someone he looked up to, followed. He actually competed in MMA, I know, at least once.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't win, but he competed.
Sure.
He tried his rolling, is it the Kappa kick? I think that's how you say it. And it didn't really work, and the guy locked a chokehold, or rear naked choke, and it was over pretty quick.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting how their careers parallel there.
Yeah. During that same time, he would also begin wrestling for New Japan Pro Wrestling, where he earned the nickname of Super Rookie due to his excellent combination of strength, speed, and technical skill. He was with New Japan, it was with New Japan where he would develop his King of Strong style gimmick and in-ring style, where he relies heavily on kicks and strikes, somewhat mirroring a martial arts technique approach to professional wrestling as popularized by Antonio Inoki. Naturally, he trained at the Inoki Dojo. It just makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
He'd win a slew of titles in New Japan. I'm not going to list them all. But he would also win their Intercontinental Championship 5 times and their World Heavyweight Championship a total of 4 times. And he even challenged Brock Lesnar for the IWGP Heavyweight Championship after Lesnar had left WWE back in January of 2006. He lost, but he did challenge Lesnar.
In the foreshadow of things to come, yes.
Oh, yeah. On January 28th of 2008, he wrestled Elix Skipper in a match taped for TNA Explosion, their syndicated program at the time. It's the only match that he wrestled for TNA.
Well, he wouldn't fit in. He wouldn't be a star. I wonder whatever happened to him.
He probably just disappeared on the independents or something somewhere.
No, he probably did. Never to be heard from again.
Yeah. After defeating AJ Styles in IWGP Intercontinental title defense at Wrestle Kingdom in January of 2016, it was announced that he had given his notice and was leaving New Japan for WWE, and Nakamura relinquished the title on January 25th of 2016. Nakamura officially made his NXT debut at the April 1st NXT TakeOver event in Dallas, where he defeated Sami Zayn, who was leaving NXT for the main roster. Nakamura got a big-time entrance at this event and was their latest premier international signing. It had been announced a few weeks prior to the event that he would be facing Zayn as his opponent, as the NXT fanbase went bananas as it was announced. Clearly, he had a serious following.
Now, help me remember back. Was he maybe the highest profile international signing at the time?
I think so. I mean, I know that there was the Kenta signing that didn't turn out as planned.
Yeah.
Balor obviously hit well. There were a few of other international signings that they made around that same time, but Shinsuke was big.
Mm-hmm.
I remember at the press conference for it, he wore this awful suit.
But you know what? That shows the savviness of the NXT fan base.
Yeah.
It's always been said, depending on what sport you like, that there's certain fan bases that are some of the most knowledgeable fan bases. And the NXT fan base is one of the most knowledgeable. And he could be appreciated there.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to steal your thunder, but
after winning his debut match against Sami Zayn, he made his NXT television debut in a victory over Ty Dillinger on the April 13th episode of NXT Television. Then 2 weeks later, he defeated the Drifter, Elias Sampson, on NXT Television. There's another guy, it's funny because Sampson's another one where, much like an Alexa Bliss, didn't really do a lot down in NXT, but when they hit the main roster, they got big. He's had a great run in WWE. I mean, granted, he's not. I don't know if he's even won a championship, right? I don't think he has.
I don't think he had. Well, I think he won the 24/7, but I understand
about that.
I understand what you're saying. A legitimate title somebody would actually want to go after. Yeah, and I saw him at a house show in Gainesville with my kids and in Florida, and I was like, okay, that's all I could say was okay.
Yeah, when I saw him, yeah, he didn't really do much for me. I didn't really think that I didn't really think he had it in him. And then he went to the main roster, and I don't know. It just he hit big, and he was over big time.
It wasn't a Braun Strowman type call up where you could look and say, okay, I see the physicalness.
No, not at all. So that's kind of an interesting step there. I mean, like, granted, it's a throwaway match, but it's with somebody who eventually will become something.
Mm-hmm.
Another 2 weeks later, he's defeating Alex Riley on May 11th on NXT television. This was during Alex Riley's attempt to return to full-time wrestling after deciding that he had enough being a commentator. Sadly for him, this run didn't last very long, and he was eventually released by WWE. Personally, I think he had a good look, was decent in the ring, and could certainly speak well for himself. I've never really understood WWE releasing him.
Well, he came from that pedigree. His father's was a well-known commentator for college football, so he definitely had that pedigree to be able to speak and talk and present himself. So,
I did not know that.
Yep.
A week later, on the May 18th episode of NXT, Shinsuke tagged with Austin Aries. Remember him?
Who?
Yeah, right. And they defeated Wesley Blake, now a Forgotten Son, and Buddy Murphy, now a Seth Rollins follower.
He is a member of the Monday Night Messiah's crew. That's true.
And when Austin Aries declared his intention to be the next NXT champion on the May 25th episode of NXT television, Shinsuke took issue, which forced NXT Commissioner William Regal to set up a match at NXT TakeOver The End of the Beginning on June 8th, 2016 at Full Sail. Mm-hmm. He defeated Austin Aries at that match at TakeOver in what was widely regarded as match of the night, outshining the main event of the steel cage match for the NXT title contested between the champion Samoa Joe and Finn Balor. That was a really good show, but they definitely outshined that main event.
And I don't know when we'll get back to Austin Aries, but yeah, there's a lot of names on here that make me go, wow, what could have been, or what should have been. And again, there's creative choices, but there are personal choices as well. How do you behave yourself, let's say?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, that's always been a problem for him. No matter where he's been, whether it was Ring of Honor or TNA or you name it. Every place that he's gone, he's had some flare up with the management and has found his way out the door.
What is the old thing? If it happens one place, yeah, it's them, or maybe second place, but a third, fourth, fifth time, yeah, maybe it's you.
Yeah.
Yeah, just maybe it's you.
So a week later, on the June 15th episode of NXT television, he would challenge Finn Balor. Balor had opened up the segment stating how, when sitting at home in Ireland watching NXT on television, he knew he had to be there. Nakamura eventually came out to state that when he was in Japan, he was watching Balor in NXT, stating that he was an icon, and even though he was no longer the NXT champion, he is still an icon, saying that he, Nakamura, pronouns pal, wants to be the champion, and he has to beat the icon. He has to beat you, as he put it. The match wouldn't happen for another 4 weeks, but man, I mean, you want to talk about big time feel, that this promo had it all. I mean, that the crowd just ate it up. It was the main event segment of that show, and it was awesome to watch.
When was the last time you saw an in-ring confrontation where a protagonist came out and said, I want a shot at the title, but to do that, I need to beat you first? Isn't it usually the other way around?
Yeah.
But yet in NXT, it's a different universe, man. And look at the shine they put on Nakamura. I said corrected. I apologize.
That universe.
I did. It's its own I can't use another word. I have to Google. I'll have to do what's a synonym for universe? Crap. But it is, and look at the shine it puts. It continues to keep on Finn Balor in that situation. Here's this international star coming to another international star who doesn't even have the title. I need to beat you to earn a shot. It's a different mindset. It's a different booking idea than anything that we're used to or we're spoon-fed on a weekly basis.
And it works so well, too.
Well, but the people wanted that. They wanted that match. I wanted that match. You wanted that match. You're not just throwing him in the ring to make us happy. You're giving me a little sizzle to go with it, with my steak. Oh, absolutely. Give me more. Yeah,
because the segment actually started out, Balor had lost to Joe at TakeOver, and then he came out and he was like, what's next for Finn Balor? What's next for Finn Balor? And he said it a few times, like basically just waiting for somebody to come out and say, I'm next for you. But finally, Nakamura comes out, and that's when Finn says, what's next for Finn Balor? Shinsuke Nakamura's next for Finn Balor. It was so great.
And again, it was a slow build, but it was done well. It was logical and to the point. And, we're not trying to don't confuse me as a fan. Just make it simple for me. Don't swerve me. Just give me a logical presentation of wrestling, and you've got a fan for life. That's all you got to do.
With that. Nothing wrong with that.
No.
So a week later, on the June 22nd episode of NXT Television, he defeated Buddy Murphy in a throwaway match. But on July 13th episode of NXT Television, he did not disappoint as Shinsuke Nakamura took on and defeated Finn Balor when they were given more than half of the show and to have their amazing match. No lie, entrances started at about the 18-minute mark of an hour-long show. You want to talk big match feeling? This one had it in spades. You have big time entrances. The ring announcer built it up real great. It had everything. It had you name it. It had big time athleticism, drama. It's a perfect match. If there is such a thing, it was amazing. I sat here for about 40 minutes watching the whole thing on a normal weekly television show. It was great. It really was. So,
and you went back and you reviewed this. When the match was over, did you think any less of Finn Balor?
Oh, absolutely not. No, they're both top talents.
Presentation, man. Presentation. You had two top talents in one heck of a matchup. And yes, this is the NXT thing. More often than not, somebody wins, somebody loses. Although since being on the USA Network, we see a few more DQ finishes or schmazzes than maybe we were used to seeing. But I could enjoy the fact that I'm going to get some type of ending, and it was a very satisfying ending. It took nothing away from how I saw Finn Balor.
No, definitely not.
It only added to Shinsuke, but you know what? For that level of performance, I still held him in a very high esteem. Still hold him in a high esteem.
And this was also before Balor went to the main roster and ended up coming back. Coming back broken, but
right.
He was huge, big time over at this point.
Well, and that just goes to prove a loss doesn't bury anyone if it's done right.
Yeah.
It doesn't. Look at all the years and matches The Rock lost. Did anybody feel like that buried him? Not really. He could get his heat back next time you give him a microphone. Well, for Balor, you can get his heat back the next time he steps inside the squared circle.
Even if you gave him a microphone, he was a good talker. He still is.
He was, and I'm glad he's gotten
it's just
an opportunity
different.
later. Yeah, but you know what? He's evolving.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
So 2 weeks later on the July 27th episode of NXT Television, Nakamura defeated Wesley Blake in another throwaway match, much like the one with Murphy a few weeks prior. Following his victory over Finn Balor, Nakamura was declared the number one contender to NXT champion Samoa Joe and would face him on the August 8th in Brooklyn, New York on NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 2. The only Brooklyn TakeOver event I did not go to due to a family conflict. I still wish I was at that one.
Sure.
Shinsuke would win the title that night, defeating Samoa Joe with the Kinshasa. It's a really great match. Just definitely, it's worth going back and watching on the network. There's so many of these matches. When I was watching the Finn Balor match, the one thing that really hit me is like, man, I miss this presentation of Shinsuke Nakamura. I really do. It's amazing how he went to the main roster and they just totally pissed him away. And we'll get into that later on. But,
the presentation in the title match, the physicality that was involved, he doesn't get to work that style in WWE because they don't really work that style on the main roster. So, for me, as far as I view his NXT run, and I know I'm jumping the gun a little bit, I apologize. To me, it's an extension of his time in Japan with New Japan Pro Wrestling. A lot of the storylines, a lot of the physical matches are very similar.
Sure.
So I kind of see that as a continuation of that particular run in his career, even though it was under the NXT banner.
And it's funny you say that about his time in New Japan. I remember when he was coming, before we actually saw anything of him in NXT, going on YouTube and just looking the guy up because I had no idea what to expect. I had no idea what the guy looked like, what his matches looked like, nothing. So I saw his moves, and to be honest, I wasn't really thrilled with his moveset. But again, I didn't get the character of Shinsuke. There's so much more to him than just his moves. And that was really lost when I was just watching his moves. Mm-hmm. So, the presentation of him in NXT, along with his moves, it was just perfect. It really was.
I think it's interesting to dovetail on what you just said. The transition to sort of it sounds terrible, but sort of the Americanized style of how wrestling is presented. To be able to transition from what he was doing there to over here, and I'm not going to say it flowed perfectly. It doesn't. There are always tweaks and changes. But I feel
there's such a vast difference between that presentation and what we're used to here.
Exactly. I watched New Japan, or I did on Access when it was on TV, and I'm like, hey, these are really good matches, but I didn't make it a point to have to be there every Friday night,
sure,
to see it. Even though I really enjoyed it, I don't follow the storylines. I just have too many other things going on. Heck, keeping up with WWE is hard enough. But it felt like when he came over here, they really gave him a chance to explore his character. How would it work for an Americanized audience? And it connected. He found a way. And props to Triple H and the NXT creative team for giving him that opportunity. And I want to make sure I keep this non-political, but how many times have we seen wrestlers from other countries portrayed in only a certain way?
Sure.
And really, what is it? Hideo Itami had the same opportunity as well. They weren't locked into that stereotype. Hey, there's freedom for you to connect with the audience, and Shinsuke made the most of it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, he definitely did. I can even remember watching one of the WWE 24 segments on, was it Takeover Dallas? When they're going over, before the show, they're going over Shinsuke's entrance and, the lighting and all that stuff, and how he was going to have the strobe light on him, and Triple H is there. Just do your thing. If you want to go like 15, 30 seconds, however long you want, just do it. That's cool. Just giving the guy that kind of freedom. You go up to the main roster and it's just like, you do this, you do this, you do this. And it's not given that freedom.
So we have The Undertaker, whose entrance is second to none. But really,
he's got all the bells and whistles in that.
He does.
You're talking flashes of light. You're talking smoke and fire and black lights, and it's amazing.
But that is who he is.
Yeah.
You have to have... The Undertaker does not come running out of the crowd and attack someone without music. That's not him. Okay? Find me someone's entrance on the main roster.
I'd like to see that.
Well, maybe in his American Badass days, maybe that could have happened. Maybe it did happen. I don't remember. My mind's mush. But.
Oh, I think when he made his debut, that he ran and slid into the ring and started beating people up.
Right, as Paul Bearer was right behind him, hitting people with the air.
No. I'm talking the American Badass debut. When he was wearing the big long trench coat and stuff.
He may not be down with the devil. He doesn't dress like the devil,
Hmm.
but he's still down with him, as he once said. His entrance is synonymous with who The Undertaker is. Shinsuke had that feel to me in NXT. The entrance, the ambiance. You can't look. That's just something innate inside of him. You can add things to it, but man, he was a star the minute he stepped foot in NXT.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I really like the fact that they previewed him coming, because that gives wrestling fans like you and me the chance to go YouTube him if we don't know anything about him. That's so smart by Triple H to say, all right, y'all go figure out a little bit about him, so that way you'll be invested when he shows up. It's very, very smart. But as far as the entrance, man, like you said in that 24 piece, man, people don't get that freedom today, Mark.
Definitely not.
There's not a freedom to, hey, go explore and see what you're really about. And look, he ate it up, well deserved.
And what's really amazing, you say that they're not given that time. And the same thing goes for Triple H. Like, if you watch Triple H's entrance, I mean, granted, he has perfected that thing, to the point where it's timed exactly right. If you're watching him enter the ring on Monday Night Raw in a normal arena, when he walks down to the ring, when he makes the turn to go around the front of the ring, when he steps, when he gets up on the ring apron and he spits the water, like, it's all timed exactly the same. If you just pay attention to the music and when specific parts of the game hits, he does it all exactly the same every single time out there. It's amazing.
What's really amazing is it works every time.
It does. It's for
Shinsuke, when he did his entrance, when the music hits, it works. And I know we came from an era, you and I, where they would play like whatever song they wanted to play, because there were no media rights being enforced back in the day. But man, the music has made all the difference for a lot of performers. Look at Hogan with Real American.
Sure.
I mean, that set the stage for him. Flair with 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
The music can add so much, and we're talking about a handful of people that their music has transcended the wrestling business. Ultimate Warrior. Well, yeah. I mean, think about it. When that Goldberg, sure. And I think, and this is just my opinion, and again, I'm weighing in ahead of time. I'm sorry. You can smack me later.
Okay. This
type of music, this type of presentation, could have been in line for something like that. I'm just going to call my shot, because this is special. You don't see this all the time.
You don't.
Sorry, I digressed.
It's okay. So jumping forward, we're up to the September 7th episode of NXT Television. He defeats Steve Cutler, Wesley Blake's eventual tag team partner in the Forgotten Sons. Another throwaway non-title match. His first title defense would come on November 19th of 2016 at NXT TakeOver Toronto, where he lost the NXT title back to Samoa Joe, which would be his first loss since signing with WWE. The victory also made Samoa Joe the first ever two-time NXT champion. So you had a lot going on there, but it's hard to argue that they did the wrong thing. It's everything here was just right. I mean, Shinsuke lost. He had I think he had they played it up. They had knee problems, and he couldn't do this Kinshasa.
And an athlete like Samoa Joe, who is a ground and pound and physical, it makes perfect sense that you could lose the title to someone like that.
Sure.
That really is an any given day example. And it's not like he lost it to me, for goodness sakes.
Yeah, I mean, this is Samoa Joe you're talking about here.
He lost it to a legitimate competitor.
However, he did rebound from that defeat by once again defeating NXT champion Samoa Joe and win the title on December 7th episode of NXT Television, becoming a two-time NXT champion himself. So now he's only the second two-time NXT champion along with Samoa Joe. The following week, on December 14th, he defeated Samoa Joe in the steel cage match to retain the NXT Championship on NXT Television. All of these Samoa Joe matches are again, very hard hitting, but they're great. I mean, they complement each other very well in each of these matches, and they told a good story between the two of them.
And I look forward to it whenever we do Samoa Joe, because I think he's going to be a fascinating subject.
Oh yeah.
But Shinsuke was favorited because he had a lot of good opponents to work with. Mm-hmm. From Finn Balor to Samoa Joe. I mean that's good stuff right there.
Yeah.
It's hard to have bad matches with those individuals. So he also came in at a very good spot to work with some just top tier talent.
Sure. As we headed into 2017, a new challenger for the NXT title came along, and on January 28th, 2017, at NXT TakeOver San Antonio, the night before the Royal Rumble, he lost the NXT Championship to the glorious Bobby Roode. I was really surprised when they did that, but Bobby was hitting it. Bobby was hitting it right then. I mean, he was getting really popular. His music, again, another CFO's creation. Really made it with him, during his run in TNA. To me, like, they always had him, like, I mean, not always. He was a tag team guy, and then he eventually worked himself up to being a world title guy. But to me, something was just missing with him in TNA, like, to be a main guy. I just didn't see that in him. But when he came to WWE and he became the glorious Bobby Roode, and he cut his promos and he had good wrestling matches, they found it. That they found what they were missing in TNA, and yeah, he was on. Yeah, he was as hot as they come.
And again, when Shinsuke lost the belt to Bobby Roode, did you think less of Shinsuke coming out of the match?
No, not at all. Because again, they played up the knee injury too. So and I tell you, there was this one shot. And this was the last time that we would see that NXT title too, the old edition of the NXT title. Bobby Roode would be holding it up, and just like, I mean, the look on his face when he was holding it up like in front of him was just awesome. I loved the way that he posed with that belt that night. I don't know if he thought it out, but it was perfect. It really was.
And again, good creative. Good booking. Took nothing away from the champion who's defeated. Nobody looked down on him and said, "Oh, see, he's." It's simple. You get someone hot, you transition the belt to them. What a crazy idea!
So by the time Shinsuke defeated T.J. Perkins on the March 8th episode of NXT television, it became evident that Shinsuke Nakamura's time in NXT was soon coming to an end. He was already a two-time champion. He lost it to Bobby Roode. There was only so much that he really had left to do in NXT. Because remember, back at that time, they didn't have the North American Championship. It was the NXT title, the tag titles, and the women's title, and that was it.
Right.
And you come in as hot as he did, and you're put directly into like main event feuds with Finn Balor and Samoa Joe, and you're winning the title twice now. I mean, what else is there really for him to do in NXT?
Well, see, that's the thing. He had maxed out. Well, what else are you going to do with him other than start, maybe pushing him down the ladder, which doesn't benefit his character. No. Because eventually you were going to transition him to the main roster, and if you do it coming out of that position, anyone who's watching NXT goes, "Oh yeah, he can't beat anybody anymore." Yeah. So he's still hot when he is beginning to get ready to transition out. He's very fortunate when he came into the company because there have been times where it's kind of dropped off talent wise. They've had to rebuild it with people. Yeah. So he came in a good spot.
So finally, on the April 1st, 2017 NXT TakeOver from Orlando, Florida, on the night before WrestleMania 33, exactly 1 year to the day after making his debut in NXT, he lost his NXT title rematch to Bobby Roode, and his run in NXT came to an end.
And Mark, how did he go out?
Went out on his back.
I've heard that that's the time-honored tradition.
Mm-hmm. But did you feel any...
Sorry, go ahead.
Did you feel like he looked bad in the loss? I know I didn't.
No, I don't think he did at all. And anyone who is a longtime wrestling fan knows it's the tradition. That's just the way it works. I'm not going to say Nakamura screwed Nakamura. He did business. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. but no, I didn't feel like he lost anything other than they're getting ready to transition him.
Yeah.
That's and again, it's very telling in how they do it, but it's not so heavy-handed that it slaps you in the face. You just kind of realize, okay, his time's done.
Mm-hmm.
Which really, if you think about it, that's the way they did it in the territory system too. If you destroy someone's character on the way out the door, then they're not going to draw a whole bunch of money for the promotion 3 states away. Yeah, they're putting people over on the way out, but you still want them to be strong.
Yeah.
Even though they're putting people over.
Yeah, so for his time in NXT, he was 14-3, and still one of only 2 men to hold the NXT championship on multiple occasions, thanks to Darren's win-loss, the official stats provider for Hey Yo Radio. I can remember when he first debuted in Dallas, just sitting there thinking, like, man, that's a guy I want to see on my TV every week. And it didn't happen every week, but more often than not, he was on TV each week with whether it was a promo or he always had something to do. I mean, it was only a year that we got him down in NXT, but man, that was a hell of a year. I mean, if we're going to be grading him, I'm going to give him an A+. They used him as well as you could possibly use a guy within such a short amount of time.
I would say it like this. I wholeheartedly agree and support your A+ rating. Look what and I don't mean this disrespectfully, look what they were able to wring out of him in a year's time. You find me somebody else that's had that good of a year.
In any promotion.
In the modern, in a more modern setting, say in the last 20 years. Other than Bill Goldberg, back in the 90s, had a tremendous run in a year.
But even at that, I mean, a lot of those matches that he was having were against like Hugh Morris and Jerry Flynn. I mean, these weren't like top level guys.
I'm sorry, you want to explain that comment about Jerry Flynn? No, just kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never quite understood that one either. Anyway.
What was his name? Thunderfoot or something?
Well, I just remember he looked like the extras from one of a Walker, Texas Ranger episode. But
he looked a lot like Bob Holly, too.
Kind of did, yeah. Kind of did.
Facially.
No, I understand. Well, and with that, I guess it kicks over to me. On the April 4th episode of SmackDown Live, when it used to be called that, it ended up being the first episode of SmackDown after WrestleMania 33. And Shinsuke Nakamura would make his main roster debut in the form of interrupting The Miz and Maurice as they were just finishing up insulting John Cena and Nikki Bella.
See, now I don't really understand the placement there because, okay, you want to put him in there against The Miz. That's great. I think The Miz is a great starting point for him. Miz is a guy who his place is secure in WWE. He's not going anywhere. And he's a really good worker. He's good at putting guys over, So he can go out there and look like a fool, and it's perfectly fine. It fits his character, and he's really great at it.
And Mark, I appreciate you bringing that up because that's a perfect transition for me because he was a good opponent for Miz to have. However,
but that didn't happen, did it?
This did not light a spark of a feud between the two. And
because why would it?
Well, that's the next thing I was going to say. You may ask yourself, why did that not happen? Well, The Miz would be traded to Raw as part of that year's Superstar shakeup. Instead, Nakamura began a feud with Dolph Ziggler, and he was able to achieve a well-earned victory in his match that lasted far too long. If you go back and watch...
Should we just cue up the music?
Oh, man. You go back and watch that match. I want to say it was it 12, 15 minutes, I want to say. And here's a guy who had just one heck of a year in NXT and fought the best that NXT had, and now you're fighting competing against one of the lower regarded competitors, and it took you almost 20 minutes to beat them.
Hey, Dolph Ziggler is a multi-time former Intercontinental Champion.
Most everyone on the roster will end up being able to say that during their career, or was a champion holder either of the WWE Universal title. I mean, it's just the way it is, and you put him in there. Look, Dolph is a great wrestler. He puts on good matches, but he should not have been able to hang with Nakamura if you really want to put over Nakamura as someone who he's destined for greater than mid-card relevance, shall we say. On the May 23rd episode of SmackDown Live, Nakamura was announced as competing alongside AJ Styles, our good friend Baron Corbin, Dolph Ziggler again, Kevin Owens, and Sami Zayn in the Money in the Bank ladder match at Money in the Bank. Who knew? Yeah. During the match, our old friend Baron Corbin would attack Nakamura with both a ladder and a camera while the artist was making his entrance.
Well, he really likes to insert himself into places that he doesn't belong, huh?
He officially is a huge part of Hey Yo Radio and will probably continue to be for a while. As per WWE policy, however, and this is unfortunate, no doctors were available, but Nakamura was checked on by medical staff and carried out of the arena. But fear not, however.
I bet you they gave him a Z-Pack.
They probably did. They probably took him to a local medical facility and checked him out there. But he
put a neck brace on his knee?
Pretty much, yeah. He was good to go after that.
Good.
He would return later during the match and actually was able to attack all the other participants, including Baron Corbin, only to lose the match when Corbin ended up retrieving the briefcase.
Of course he did.
You can't hold down talent, my friend. This led to a match between the two at WWE Battleground on July 23rd, where Nakamura would gain some measure of revenge as Nakamura defeated Corbin, but only by disqualification after Baron Corbin would attack Shinsuke with a low blow. File that one away, kids. That's going to come in play later. 2 days later on SmackDown Live, Nakamura would defeat Corbin in a rematch to end, I guess, conclusively their feud at the time. From there, Shinsuke's trajectory picked up quite a bit. On the August 1st episode of SmackDown Live, Nakamura defeated the greatest of all time, at least according to Michael Cole, that's right, John Cena, to earn the right to challenge Jinder Mahal.
I thought you were going to say Shane McMahon.
Well, we all know that, Michael Cole believes John Cena is greatest of all time, in his opinion. I classify that. He earned the right to challenge Jinder Mahal for the WWE Championship on August 20th at SummerSlam. And with that, finally the stage was set for his ascension. No pun intended. Hashtag future profile on this podcast.
Oh, God.
But Nakamura lost after interference from the Singh brothers. But fortunately for Shinsuke, the opportunities didn't dry up. They continued. And on the September 5th episode of SmackDown Live, Nakamura would defeat the Viper, the Apex Predator himself, Randy Orton, to earn another title shot against Jinder Mahal, this time at WWE Hell in a Cell. Unfortunately, though, Nakamura suffered yet another defeat to Jinder Mahal. But a few weeks later, on the October 31st edition of SmackDown Live, Nakamura would score a pinfall victory over Kevin Owens to earn a spot on Team SmackDown at Survivor Series. And on another things are looking up because, see, this is his second Big Four pay-per-view stage that he's about to step into, and as a member of Team SmackDown,
about to step into something else too.
Well, it certainly smells. He would be the first man to be eliminated from Team SmackDown in the match by Raw's Braun Strowman's Power Slam.
Ugh.
Yes. Unfortunately for Shinsuke, the losing streak would continue because on December 17th at WWE Clash of Champions, Nakamura would team up with former foe Randy Orton, but it was in a losing effort against Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. And by virtue of their victory, they kept their jobs as Daniel Bryan and the greatest in the world, Shane McMahon, were serving as the special guest referees. Nakamura again made history. He was part of the inaugural episode of the Mixed Match Challenge on January 16, 2018, and was teamed up with Natalya in the Mixed Match Challenge, but unfortunately they were defeated in the first round by Finn Balor and Sasha Banks.
I saw pictures from that where he's wearing like a Hart family jacket, right?
Yep.
Instead of his normal like red and black gear.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Unfortunately, they didn't make it out of the first round in that particular incarnation. And having been on a prolonged losing streak over the last couple of months, he had no real momentum. However, on January 28th at the Royal Rumble, Nakamura would enter the Rumble at number 14 and go on to shock the the WWE Universe by winning the men's Royal. I did it for you by winning the men's Royal Rumble match after last eliminating Roman Reigns.
I remember that. That was a heck of a night. That was really that was awesome to see him win that.
There was the face-off towards the end of the match. The 3 veterans versus the 3 younger upstarts.
Yeah.
And that was good. That was really well done. And Nakamura came off like this was a big deal. And I was so happy.
And there was hope for him.
I know, and I was so happy for him because he would announce just a little bit later that he was going to cash in his opportunity to challenge AJ Styles for the WWE Championship at WrestleMania 34. Now,
dream match right there, man.
Stop taking it from me, man. That's not fair. Because the next line is, as the term dream match would be applied to the pending encounter, for whatever reason, it just never seemed to get in gear as the match, and it just never seemed to get together. And Nakamura would suffer yet another defeat on now an even bigger stage, the biggest stage of them all, as he suffered a pinfall loss to AJ Styles, now having lost on 3 of the Big 4 pay-per-views since his debut on the main roster.
Because why not?
Well, I mean, we're tearing him down so we can build him up. You understand? That's how it works.
It's a slow burn.
Yeah, it certainly is. After the match, a broken, frustrated Nakamura would turn heel by attacking Styles with a low blow. It's back, followed by a Kinshasa. And on the next episode of SmackDown Live, Nakamura said in an interview that he got, quote, too emotional and, quote, was sorry for attacking Styles, but when pressed by the interviewer to give more insight, to explain more of why he did what he did, Shin would sarcastically say, sorry, no speak English. And to completely fulfill his full heel turn later that night, Nakamura would attack both AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan. He low-blowed AJ a couple of times. He nailed Bryan in the back of the head with the Kinshasa. And Nakamura would continue low-blowing AJ in the following weeks. And then it was announced coming out of that he would get a rematch for the title at the Greatest Royal Rumble in Saudi.
So if that's all it takes is just low-blowing the champion a whole bunch of times, then why the hell not, That's good storytelling right there, pal.
Opportunities, pal. On the April 24th episode of SmackDown Live, Nakamura would debut both a new entrance and a new theme song.
And this is another great theme song for him. It's a remake of his original song, originally done by CFO's The Rising Sun. This time it's done by Shadows of the Sun. It's called Shadows of a Setting Sun. It was needed if he's going to turn heel. It takes away the crowd's interaction because of the way that the music is mixed. You don't have the opportunity for the crowd to go da da da, much like the when they remixed Kurt Angle's music back in the day, to take out the parts where the fans could chant "You suck." This took care of that, and also there's words to it now. It's all in Japanese, but I love this entrance. Again, a little bit of a tweak on the old music, which was fantastic to begin with. This one works. A lot of times they'll remix something, and it doesn't always work. To me, I listen to. I love The Rising Sun. I listen to Shadows of a Setting Sun, and to me, it's better than the original. And there's very few songs in wrestling that the remake is better than the original. The only other one I can think of is the difference between Evolve, which was the Evolution original music, and Line in the Sand, which was the redone Motorhead version.
And armed with all that, with a new theme
I'm a music
song.
guy.
No, and that's cool. But armed with his new theme song, armed with his new entrance, and his newly established heel persona, he would travel to Saudi Arabia on April 27th to compete.
He's going to the moon, right?
He had better chance on the moon. He would compete at the Greatest Royal Rumble, and this match with AJ Styles for the title.
The Greatest Royal Rumble. I'm sorry to cut you off, but
it's okay.
Remember Titus, the Greatest Royal Rumble?
You know, as a Florida Gator football fan, he's a proud alum, national championship winning team member. Yes, I do.
Corey Graves' reaction was amazing.
I don't know.
Oh my God!
You know, there are some times. Have you ever seen the video of Bobby Heenan? It's a Hacksaw Jim Duggan match from like WCW Pro or something. Okay, from back in the day in the early '90s, and Tony Schiavone mentions how intelligent Hacksaw Jim Duggan is, and Heenan loses it for the entire match. And thank God the match only went about 3.5-4 minutes, but he just laughed the entire.
Yeah, he just lost it for the whole match, just laughing. It was awesome.
You know what? It's realism, man. I saw it. My wife, who is not a wrestling fan, even made me rewind it so she could see it the first time again.
It was like, wait, what just happened there?
Where did he go? Well, you know, I've seen too much wrestling because I'm thinking, did Hornswoggle get him? Did he get drugged down underneath the ring? I don't know.
And if you're Titus, like, do you even come out from underneath the ring? Like, what is going through his head? Like, oh my God, how do you get up from that and get in the ring?
The only
thing if it was me, I'd just stay under there and be like, oh, he's gone.
The only thing I can think of is come out the other side swinging a kendo stick. I don't know what you do, but yes, that is a fun time.
I will not show my face again on television. That is for that night.
I will. While that's true, I will always support Titus, he does wonderful work on behalf of WWE and behalf of kids, and especially kids without fathers. So I appreciate everything he does at that level. He's a great man. I've met him a couple of times at different events in Gainesville. So wonderful dude, but like me, I trip over my own feet. Yeah, things happen. Okay, it just happens. But that may be your greatest memory of the Greatest Royal Rumble, not the fact that Braun Strowman won it, or that they actually trucked in a couple of NXT people to be in it. But we'll talk about that.
They gave away a belt too to Braun Strowman, didn't they?
He got something for
Beautiful green WWE title.
Yeah, I'm sure that us people back in North Carolina were really excited to see him bring that one home. However, on the card in Shinsuke's match, he and AJ would fight to a double disqualification, or a double countout rather. So Styles, again, shout out to Corey Graves, Champion's Advantage, retained the WWE Championship due to the countout. But as a result, we needed another rematch between Nakamura and AJ, and they made that for Backlash that year, and they actually added on a no disqualification stipulation on the May 1st edition of SmackDown Live. At Backlash May 6th, they fought to a no contest. So it wasn't, there was no disqualification, but it was a no contest because both competitors low blowed one another.
Can't get enough of that, huh?
Surely you remember that. And Styles would again, under Champion's Advantage, retain his strap. Since no decisive winner was determined, then SmackDown commissioner, because he's too important to be the general manager, Shane McMahon would announce one more rematch between Shinsuke and AJ at Money in the Bank. So it all comes full circle. Remember last year, Money in the Bank attacked Baron Corbin?
He was the commissioner. I think Daniel Bryan was the general manager, right?
Correct. He couldn't lower himself to be general. He had to have a higher position. Being a McMahon, you understand. They can't lower themselves to us common folk. Yeah. But he would have a match. Check this out: a non-title bout on the May 15th episode of SmackDown Live, where the winner between he and AJ could choose the stipulation.
You all know who's winning that, right?
You know what? I didn't see it coming, but Nakamura would win the non-title bout, and then would reveal the following week, because we can't just finish it up, that he chose a last man standing match after he again attacked AJ Styles with a low blow.
You think it'd be like a first low blow match, you know?
Yeah, you'd think. And he finished laying him out with a Kinshasa, and then proceeded to give him a 10 count, which AJ could not answer. But at Money in the Bank, 1 year later, after Shinsuke debuted on the main roster in a pay-per-view environment, on June 7th...
Finally wins the big one, right?
No. Shinsuke would come up short once again in failing to win the championship. And if that wasn't bad enough, a couple of weeks later, he was apparently bitten by a police dog.
What?
Yeah, in an incident, he was out for a little bit. He was bitten by a police dog in an incident backstage.
Oh, so that's legit.
That's legit. Yep.
Oh, okay.
I'm not,
it was a storyline. It's like, what? Where does that fit in?
I just assumed that it's Rick Steiner back with his dogs. I don't know. But
were they setting up a kennel from hell?
No, but that match certainly has a place in hell for that. On July 3rd, things began to look up a little bit for Shinsuke. After all this negativity he had been through, it was announced that Nakamura would get another opportunity to capture gold as Shin, who was now being referred to as such.
Name. His name's not Christopher. He can't go by the name of Chris. I'm sorry. Shin is not... Who the hell wants to name him, or who the hell wants to go by the name of Shin?
Listen, we can't have people with the same name. So
there's another Shinsuke in the company?
No, but I'm sure that's what was the thought process. Look, I'm amazed there's an Austin theory. Okay, because there can only be one Austin. But I digress.
Well, that's his first name.
Yeah, but when they start yelling Austin, Austin, how are they going to know? First, last? I don't know.
Did they say that?
I don't know, but one day when he turns face, they will, I'm sure. But he would have an opportunity to face Jeff Hardy to perhaps attain the United States Championship at Extreme Rules. And on July 15th, Nakamura would climb that championship mountain using, you guessed it, a low blow and a Kinshasa on Jeff Hardy to win the WWE United States Championship,
Jeff Hardy.
thereby capturing Nakamura's first main roster title victory. I'm going to take a moment. Let you appreciate that. After the match,
United States Championship.
U.S. Look, held by many illustrious wrestlers in the past, Dusty Rhodes.
Yeah, but those are like way in the past.
What are you trying to say? Are you trying to say it doesn't have the value it once had?
That's kind of what I'm getting at, yeah.
Well, that's just hurtful. I mean, come on, it's his first main title win. Good grief.
Yeah.
All right, well, after the match, Nakamura's luck looked to turn back the other way again as he was confronted by the returning Viper, Randy Orton, who would, instead of attacking Shin, proceeded to attack Jeff Hardy before leaving the ring. Nakamura would go on to successfully defend his newly won United States Championship in a rematch against Jeff Hardy at SummerSlam. And on the August 27th episode of SmackDown Live, Nakamura would refuse to compete, declaring that the United States of America had been renamed Nakamerica, and that he wouldn't face anyone until he found a worthy opponent.
So did he turn like red, white, and blue, like all of his gear and everything while he was U.S. champ?
He kind of did.
And that's the thing that really drives me crazy about WWE. And there's so many times that, like, okay, Rusev wins the U.S. title, and he's all about the U.S. You know, who else? Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens wins the U.S. title, and he's all decked out in red, white, and blue. He looks like Uncle Sam. You know, like I don't understand. Like, why do they have to do that to everybody who wins that stupid title?
Again, I'm not going to make this a political thing, but it really infuriates me that
a Japanese guy won the United States title.
All right, let me take a step back before I have an ulcer here. I remember the mid '80s, and I didn't get to see it all because of my age, but Magnum TA and Nikita Koloff fighting over the United States Championship. Nikita Koloff would beat him in the best of 7 series. On a side issue, maybe one day we'll talk about a story of a local guy a couple hours from me who once pretended to be Russian at a NWA event and actually would defend the Russians in Russian even though he wasn't speaking Russian, but the locals didn't know he wasn't speaking Russian. Awesome. Anyway, we'll get to that one day where he almost got shot in a small town here for defending the Koloffs. But I don't remember Nikita Koloff donning the red, white, and blue after winning the best of 7 series with Magnum TA.
Now, why didn't he? Come on. I mean, he had to become American in order to win the title, didn't he?
First of all, he was loyal to the mother country, and that's certainly his prerogative to be that way. But in all seriousness, it's just not something people do.
It's just tacky. I don't understand why they need to change the presentation of someone just because they want a stupid title.
Well, it infuriates me because it kind of erases the identity of the individual.
Yeah.
And that's never gone well in wrestling. It has never ended well. It's never drawn more fans. It's never gotten you more publicity. It's never gotten you more mainstream attention. But I'm going to digress. I'm going to move on. Don't want to hit the Dr. Thunder too hard tonight. So Nakamura, post SummerSlam, he would wrestle on the September 11th episode of SmackDown Live and would lose to Jeff Hardy, but only by disqualification because there was interference from Randy Orton. And then he decided he would not defend his WWE United States Championship at the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, but then General Manager Page ordered him to defend his championship on the September 18th episode of SmackDown Live. And he did so, but he would hold out until SmackDown 1000, and he would defeat Rusev that night. He would then have a qualifying match against Rey Mysterio, who was returning from a long absence. He was in a qualifying match for the WWE World Cup at Crown Jewel. This for a drinking game, go ahead and start.
The World Cup.
Yeah. But undeterred, Nakamura would successfully retain his championship on the October 3rd episode of SmackDown Live against R-Truth and then against Rusev at Crown Jewel. So thank goodness he kind of erased the taste of that loss in his previous stint. However, Nakamura would go on to lose to the to WWE Intercontinental Champion Seth Rollins in an interbrand champion versus champion match at Survivor Series that year. Again, over on the Survivor Series. On the December 25th episode of SmackDown Live, which was actually taped on December 18th.
So is he trying to be like the anti-Charlotte Flair here?
How do you say that? In what way?
Well, losing all the matches on pay-per-view. Pretty
much that's what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then he would actually go on to lose his United States Championship to Rusev on the December 25th episode of SmackDown Live, which ended his reign at 156 days.
And let me guess, did that happen on Rusev Day?
I believe it became Rusev Day because of the victory.
Ah.
He would come back on January 27th and actually defeat Rusev at the Royal Rumble to win back the United States Championship, claim his second championship.
Now, that was on Rusev Day, too, right?
It was an unfortunate Rusev Day, yes, because every day is Rusev Day. He attempted to harness that momentum, man. He won a title. He won a championship. He was looking to have a repeat performance. Shin would participate in the Royal Rumble that night, entered, unfortunately, at number 3. Man, he failed to capture that lightning in the bottle effect he had the previous year, and he was eliminated by Mustafa Ali.
If I remember correctly, I don't know, maybe it's a different year, but Ali went pretty far in that Royal Rumble, right?
He did. I believe he did, yes.
Okay.
2 days later, unfortunately, his woes continued because on the very next episode of SmackDown Live, Nakamura would lose the United States Championship to R-Truth. Interestingly enough, Rusev would confront Truth, pushed him into a title match, but Truth would retain the title, of all people. Then after the match, Nakamura would join forces with Rusev, and they attacked Truth and formed an alliance between the two. So this was big.
Sounds like it.
In their first major test as a duo, they had the opportunity to compete as a team, and in their very first match, their very first outing, they would be defeated by the New Day.
No!
They were not successful, unfortunately. However, they were given an opportunity for redemption, again, on the biggest stage of them all, WrestleMania 35.
Okay,
They competed man, this is big. They competed in the Fatal 4-Way for the SmackDown Tag Titles.
And they won.
They did.
They did?
No, not really. They would be bested, unfortunately. They did not win. So they gave one more go of it.
Here, man.
What's that?
You get my hopes up here.
Well, you know what? They would try one more time to get it all together. They attempted to be successful as a duo, but neither one of them could win, not the greatest Royal Rumble, but the 51-man Battle Royal at the 21.
Why did they do 51?
Because I guess 50 is the most they've done, so they had to do 51. Because I guess the greatest Royal Rumble was 50, right? So 51 would make sense. But anyway, yeah, they were not successful at the 2019 Super Showdown. They both would be eliminated in the matchup, and that would pretty much end any duo, the duo of Rusev and Nakamura. Nakamura would take a little bit of time off of television, but he would come back on the June 25th episode of SmackDown and interrupted, and tell me, Mark, if you've heard this earlier this evening, he interrupted then WWE Intercontinental Champion Finn Balor during a backstage interview, and would go on to express his interest in winning that championship before walking off.
Was he an icon at that time?
He was not considered an icon at that time. He was damaged goods, unfortunately, at that time. And just a few weeks later, the match
damaged goods on the main roster. That's amazing.
You know what? I'm sorry to break it to you. I didn't know if you were expecting the story to go this way. But a few weeks later, Shin would get another opportunity at Gold, and on the July 9th episode of SmackDown,
one more match.
Nakamura would once again defeat Finn Balor, but this time in a non-title match. This set up an opportunity 5 days later at the WWE Extreme Rules pre-show. They couldn't make it onto the main show, as I guess they had to be cut for time.
Nothing says you're big time as making it to the pre-show, you know?
And Nakamura would defeat Finn Balor. He conquered the Prince, Mark. He pinned him and captured the Intercontinental Championship for the very first time.
That wasn't even on the main show.
Well, here's the kicker. He won the Intercontinental title in WWE. So now he's the only guy to hold both the Intercontinental title in WWE and the NIWGP, or New Japan Pro Wrestling, at the time. And by the way, this list includes Chris Jericho, who also has won both titles. And most recently, as of last Friday night, AJ Styles can add his name to that list, as he captured the Intercontinental Championship. So the list is now 3, no longer 2. So that's free. I'm not going to charge you for that. By the way,
can I give it back?
No, there's no returns right now. We're suspending that. Interestingly enough, we talked about his heritage. He is actually the first Asian-born wrestler to ever win the Intercontinental title, so that's a cool thing.
That's interesting.
Yeah. On July 27th, he would successfully defend his belt against Mustafa Ali, gaining a little bit of revenge from his elimination at the Royal Rumble earlier in the year. Nakamura, who seemed to feel that alliances were better, would go on to form one with Sami Zayn, and he would help Shin defeat The Miz at Clash of Champions to retain the Intercontinental strap. And on the October 18th edition of SmackDown Live, Nakamura retained his title against Roman Reigns. Sort of in losing fashion, because our old friend Baron Corbin interfered, causing the disqualification.
Well, he just loves sticking his nose where it doesn't belong, doesn't he?
Yeah, he is truly a Hey Yo radio favorite. We're going to fast forward to the Survivor Series this past year, 2019, where again history would be made, because that night NXT faced off with Raw and SmackDown for brand supremacy. And for Nakamura's part, he was thrown into a 3-way match, an inter-brand triple threat match, where he would face off against NXT North American champion Roderick Strong and Raw's United States champion AJ Styles. and he would go on to lose that match that night because, again, he's over at Survivor Series.
Of course he is.
But on the November 29th episode of SmackDown, Nakamura and Zayn increased their ranks because they brought on Cesaro to help put them over the top. Unfortunately, that night, the new faction got off to a rocky start as Zayn and Nakamura unsuccessfully challenged the New Day for the SmackDown Tag Team Championships. On the heels of that, Nakamura would then pick a feud with Braun Strowman because apparently Braun pinned him in a six-man tag match on the December 12th episode of SmackDown. And then would challenge him to a singles match 2 weeks later where he got decimated. I don't know any other way to say it. At the Royal Rumble this year, Nakamura entered the Rumble match with a better draw than he had the previous year. He drew 11 this year, but he joined a Who's Not rather than a Who's Who, and quickly being eliminated by WWE Champion Brock Lesnar.
I hated that Royal Rumble.
I know.
I hated that thing so badly.
I know you did, brother. I know. And on January 31st on SmackDown, the negativity surrounding Mark's feelings about the Royal Rumble would bring Shinsuke's hold on the Intercontinental strap to a conclusion as it slipped away in a loss to, there again, Braun Strowman, which this ended his reign.
At least it wasn't Baron Corbin.
It was not. But the reign lasted 201 days this time.
Somewhat respectable.
Well, I think so, but
unless if you look at like the actual title run and how he was portrayed during it, But I mean, the number of days looks good.
I think you're muddying the waters here. I really do. So that ended his reign, and he was very depressed. He was very upset. But I want to end this with some good news. Because in what must be seen by wrestling fans, journalists, and poet laureates, a major upset took place at the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view on March 8th as Sami Zayn, along with Nakamura and Cesaro, defeated Braun Strowman in a 3-on-1 handicap match for the Intercontinental Championship. And Zayn would become the new champion because he actually scored the pin on Braun Strowman. But why is this monumental, you may ask?
I got to say, for the way that they ran that match was just beautiful. I mean, the whole story going into it, how, Braun couldn't put his hands on Zayn no matter what he did and everything. It was played up perfectly. I laughed as one thing after another prevented Braun Strowman from getting his hands on Sami Zayn. And then Zayn, in the end, gets the pin on Strowman. I mean, it was perfect.
Well, why is this monumental, Mark? You may be wondering, how is this historical? I'm going to tell you. Because no one in WWE loses a handicap match to the team with more competitors. Think about that.
Yeah. Well, John Cena, I think, beat like 15 people, right?
Like I said, no one loses a handicap match against more competitors.
Unless you're Braun Strowman, the guy who had been yo-yoed like over 3 years.
Who had been yo-yoed, and then at WrestleMania, I guess, would have his biggest moment in his career by capturing the Universal title.
But that's only because Roman Reigns wasn't wrestling at the time. I mean, that was his title match. The title was clearly going to be going to Roman Reigns that night. Braun Strowman was just the lucky guy who picked number 2.
Well, if you go back and you listen to any interviews with the greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time, the Honky Tonk Man, he'll tell you the story of him getting the belt that night was it was supposed to go on Butch Reed. That was the rumor, but Butch Reed wasn't around. So you'll do. Here, go win the belt. So yeah, that concludes my recitation of the main roster to date of Shinsuke Nakamura.
So how would you grade his main roster run?
All right, so I thought about this, and I have to eliminate any of his IWGP reigns or any of his NXT stuff. I had to compartmentalize that, to be honest, because those are the days I enjoyed the most.
Sure.
So with that, and if I'm going to be honest, the way he's been portrayed, I give it a C+ at best.
You're a lot nicer than I am. I give them a D+.
Okay.
I mean, here's a guy who was as hot can be coming out of NXT, and they debut him on the main roster. Then they throw him with Dolph Ziggler for whatever reason. We went over this whole thing. I mean, it's one thing after another. They just cut his legs out from underneath him.
Right.
They took away everything that made him unique, and now he's just another main roster guy who is just there. Why he wants to continue to go to work every week is beyond my comprehension. This has been an awful run. I mean, I know they've given him a couple of mid-card titles, but this is a guy who can main event. The fans believe him. Did anyway. I don't know if they will now, but yeah, they've done this guy no favors whatsoever.
Well, yes, but he's got a nickname now.
Yeah.
He's Shin.
The artist.
He is the artist as well. And he's not the artist formerly known as Prince Iaukea either.
Thank God. Give him time. I'm sure he will be.
Who was it? Who was it he had? Paisley, was it? As his manager? Mm-hmm. We'll have to get him Shin a manager.
Yeah.
I'm a little nicer on it because, he has been he's been featured, just not the way I want him to be featured.
No, not at all.
But again, as we go through this series of NXT talents who move to the main roster, this unfortunately is going to be a reoccurring theme.
Yeah.
But and it's interesting. I guess his contract was up this year, and my understanding is he re-signed. So there you are.
So all right.
It's hard to move. He's married. He's got small kids.
Yeah.
It's hard to uproot your family and go back to Japan or somewhere else or join AEW. I mean, he knows what he's dealing with, and he's paid well. So good for him.
So he just transitions to a guy that's just happy to be there.
And I really do wonder, not just from the NXT perspective, but how many people that's just who they become.
Mm-hmm.
Because the money's hard to argue with, depending on who you are and where you're slotted.
Yeah. So anyway, I guess moving on. Before we jump into our review of WWE Backlash, I want to take a moment to appeal to our faithful listeners here. We're currently available now on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, PW Insider Elite, and also our YouTube channel. Basically anywhere and everywhere you like to get your podcasts. So please do us a solid, like, subscribe, give us a 5-star review. All of that helps us out, helps us to make us more visible to the masses. Please, if you like our content, give it a share around and get us some more ears. Thank you, and now back to our regularly scheduled programming. So we're going to jump into WWE Backlash here.
Yes.
Do you have the card up?
It's coming up right now. I'm glad you
asked. I understand you have a rant in store for us.
So I want to work my way up to that. I don't want to blow a blood vessel too early in the game. But I do want to kind of review some of our predictions. And
now, I have a confession to make. I didn't actually watch the entire show. I did fall asleep during the greatest wrestling match ever.
How can you even admit that?
Well, it didn't keep my interest.
But it was the greatest match ever.
Yeah, it was not. I did get a kick out of it, and I'm sure you can hear it in the background here. The music that they played during the show occasionally was one of the theme songs from The Greatest Showman, the movie that was starring Hugh Jackman and a number of others. It's a great movie. I just never really expected to hear this song on a WWE pay-per-view. But that's just me. But anyway, apparently it was the greatest show. So I'll let you take it away, and we'll see how we did. I think I might be able to remember my predictions.
I might be able to get some of them. I don't know. We'll see. And if we didn't get them right, we'll pretend like we did.
Sure.
So we began on the kickoff show with Apollo Crews defending the United States Championship again, and that's a huge part of our show tonight. But he would defeat Andrade, #future victim of our show, in the kickoff match.
I thought you were going to say Future Endeavor.
No, I'm not into anyone losing their job. No. He would defeat Andrade in the kickoff match in what was one of the really good showing for Apollo Crews. Thought it was a good match. Really enjoyed it.
If I remember correctly, I chose Andrade to win that one. I think that you chose Apollo, because I never saw anything in Apollo.
Well, you the former Uha Nation, I probably did pick him. So I'm going to take the win, because Lord knows I need a win every once in a while. The women's tag team championships were defended. Bayley and Sasha would go on to defeat Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross and the returning Iconics to pay-per-view.
And if I remember correctly, I chose the Iconics just because I love them. You chose Bliss and Cross, I believe, because you were expecting Bayley and Sasha to
eventually turn on one another.
Yeah, to turn on each other.
And I would be wrong on this one. Bayley and Sasha retain, and no spoilers for this week, but I understand they will appear on NXT television.
I know.
So
we talked about that last week. So clearly somebody listens to our show.
Well, I don't want to call it any names, but you know who you are. We have friends in high places. Mm-hmm. The Raw Women's Championship was defended.
In towers.
Well, it's only one tower, isn't it?
It is only one tower.
Okay, all right then. The Raw Women's Championship was defended as Asuka and Nia Jax fought to a very unsatisfying double countout.
Yeah, that's the one thing we didn't take that into account. We
silly us. What were we thinking?
And that's the thing. I guess I've gotten used to my NXT booking, which typically you don't see that in. You don't really have a lot of non-finishes in NXT. Whereas on the main roster, you tend to get those quite a bit.
And again, it's a different day where, we were driving. Remember when pay-per-views they wanted finishes that drove people to Raw the next day. It's a totally different world now.
We actually we chose opposingly here. You picked Jax and I picked Asuka, and we both lost.
We did. So yet again, I find a way to lose. I have snatched defeat from the iron jaws of victory. The Universal Championship.
I don't know how I'm remembering this, but
I'm actually worried about you as a friend to a friend that you remember these things. Braun Strowman defended the Universal Championship successfully over, and this again shows you how hard it is to win a handicap match. He defeated The Miz and John Morrison.
I think we were united on this, and we both got the victory with Braun Strowman going over. Again, I don't see why you would throw a tag team in a match against a world heavyweight title.
Well, if we learn nothing else at Elimination Chamber, man, upsets happened.
Yeah, and it was funny. I do have to give him this, that when Miz pulled Morrison off of Strowman, and Morrison gave him the look like, "What the hell are you doing?" And Miz was like, "I don't know what I was doing." That was well done.
Yeah, because it's such an automatic reflex in a triple threat match.
Yeah,
people are always pulling each other off.
Now, previous to the actual show, they never actually announced that it was one-on-one-on-one, correct?
Correct. It was a 2-on-1.
So they went into this thing figuring that, they're going to beat Braun Strowman and they're going to be co-champions, correct?
No, it was announced only one of them could be the champion.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't technically one-on-one-on-one.
Because I think, didn't they say something earlier on in the show, like in a backstage interview, that they were going to be co-champions?
They probably did. I was probably distracted by my cute little puppies. I'm not gonna lie. And I'm going to go. We're still going out of.
I didn't know you talk about her like that.
Just going to let that dead air speak for itself. Because when she goes back and listens to this, I'm not getting pounded into the ground. You're not going to draw me in, man. I'm not going to give in. But we're doing these matches out of sequence on purpose. On purpose. The main event was.
Did we skip something there?
We may have. We're going to come back to it. Don't worry, Mark. We're not going to forget it. We're going to come back to it.
Okay.
The main event featured WWE Champion Drew McIntyre getting his head handed to him for the majority of the match, only to get to hit a fluke Claymore kick and pin Bobby Lashley, the Almighty. Bobby
I actually
Lashley.
did see this, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Who was distracted by MVP and Lana, so he couldn't finish the deal.
Now I got to give it to MVP here. I really think that MVP's been going to like the Paul Heyman school of acting. Mm-hmm. His facials at ringside were amazing. You know, like after like the whole like mix up with the in the loss, he's standing there at ringside with his hand over his mouth, like, oh my God, what just happened? You know, like, and you believed him. You know, I mean. I'm glad that they brought him back. He's a great personality, and like I said, he's a heck of an actor. You know, he made you believe that you know that he really didn't know what the hell happened in the finish there. Because really, he
wasn't alone. I was like, what was that?
Yeah.
And just
they clearly, I mean, they had the match in hand. You know, sure. I mean, they had Drew on. I mean, granted, every time that Lashley went for a pin on Drew, it was only a 1 count, you know, but they definitely had the match in hand. Yeah, they were running the match, and Drew just hit that Claymore out of nowhere, and that was it.
So good showing by Bobby Lashley, weak finish. I think we both picked Drew to win, so I think we're good on that one. And by the way, for MVP, I've always enjoyed MVP's work. Especially his stuff with Matt Hardy back in the day. I really enjoyed that. And just, you know, because we want to connect with our audience.
Speaking of the stuff with Matt Hardy.
Hold that thought. Okay. That's where we're going. Okay. But I would like to point out MVP, one of the few wrestling songs that made it into my wedding playlist. Just throwing that out there.
That's awesome.
That's right. The church was very impressed. Like, we've never heard that before. Well, you need to watch a little more WWE. It'll help you. True story, by the way. Actually happened. Had one of the ladies come up and talk to me about that. Well, that does lead us where Mark wanted us to go. And that is, there is one additional championship match that...
Well, we actually didn't touch on the greatest wrestling match ever.
That one, and we need to discuss Sheamus and Jeff Hardy as well.
That's right, yes.
Sheamus would defeat Jeff Hardy. So no measure of revenge. For young Jeff.
Yeah, again, I love Sheamus. You know, I love his moves. He's a great power wrestler. You know, I think he's got a very unique look. I love his music. Everything about him. I think he's a good talker too. He's another guy that I just feel like that, you know, they started down the road with him. They gave him the title a couple of times. They kind of missed the boat with him. I think that he has more to offer than what they've gotten out of him.
And I'm not sure him feuding with Jeff Hardy moves the needle one way or the other, but it's nice to see Sheamus on TV. So
yeah.
It is what it is. Unfortunately, there's only so many prominent feuds on display, and his isn't one of them. I guess, hey, good that he's on TV. Now, you're a lot safer on TV than when you're not.
Absolutely.
That does lead us to the greatest match potentially in the history of mankind. And I know there have been some good ones. I know there's the whole Flair Steamboat trilogy that, you know, I was privileged to see, but they were good. There were other great matches as well. There's the whole Ricky Steamboat, Randy Savage match, WrestleMania 3.
Then there's that one from New Japan a few years ago that everybody was all crazy about.
There is
Okada and somebody else.
So, yeah, some other guy, not very popular with somebody else. Yeah.
I honestly don't remember who it is because I don't watch New Japan, but I know that it got like huge.
That would be the Kenny Omega match, wouldn't it?
That's right, Omega and Okada. That's right.
Which I watched it. It was a grueling, brutal match. I mean, as far as physicality, they put on a heck of a show. So depending on what your tastes are, you may love that. Yes, I've heard it referred to as that.
Kenny Olivier.
For some folk, it might be Owen and Brett.
Motherfucker!
Wow, you went there. You really just went there, didn't you? Owen and Brett had a tremendous match at WrestleMania. So there's a lot of really great matches.
That was an amazing one, WrestleMania 10.
If
you haven't seen that, go back and watch it.
John Cena, for all the crap gets thrown his way, has had some really good matches through the years.
Yeah, Big Match John has had really great matches with a lot of people. CM Punk, even as few of his matches with Randy Orton have been pretty good.
Shawn Michaels was good.
Shawn Michaels, Triple H. Big Match John does deliver. There's
a theme there. Good workers can have some great matches. Even his stuff with AJ, his stuff with Dean Ambrose wasn't bad either.
Yeah.
I still don't know whatever happened to that dude either. I hope he landed on his feet.
Yeah.
So there have been some quote dream matches. Heck, we'll even throw in something from Bruno Sammartino's day just because we want to touch on the 60s. But having said all that, we were witness to the greatest match in the history of mankind. Because we got to see Edge versus Randy Orton, 2 months removed from their last match, which was good. It was an excellent production.
Very long.
It was. This one was long as well. Had a ton of false finishes in it. A ton of finishers that are not used by these two individuals typically. But in the end...
a very interesting camera angle, too.
That is true. And
never in my entire history of watching professional wrestling have I ever seen a camera angle from underneath where guys are locking up at the beginning of the match. And I don't ever want to see that again because that looked stupid as all hell.
Kevin Dunn call?
Yeah. I mean, that was another one where it's just like, why would they do that? And then as soon as they cut to a different angle, you're looking down there. It's like, well, where the hell's the camera?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's just, I hate it when they do that because it takes me completely out of the thing, because it's like, obviously they're not filming this all in one sitting.
Right, because where's the camera person now?
Yeah.
But they would have a very long. It was a good match. It was good production, and Randy Orton would claim victory in this match. So I guess he is the champion of the greatest wrestling match ever.
With the punt kick, right?
It was the punt kick, yeah. Pretty
which
vicious
is actually
looking punt.
Something that he hasn't done in quite some time.
Yeah. And again, we saw a rock bottom, we saw a stunner, a couple of different finishes that they don't typically use.
We really needed to see that.
Well, look, my take on it. I am not a big fan of 15 false finishes where people are hitting big moves. When you hit your finish, 9 out of 10 times it ought to finish. Unless it's going to be a title change or something where the match is going to go on another couple of minutes and then there's a definitive finish.
I mean, it's one thing when you have like Eugene hitting like the rock bottom or the Stone Cold Stunner or something like that,
right.
Because he's playing the fan, he's playing that he's like a fan of all this, like just in that world. But don't have Edge and Orton using those moves. That's just silly. We've never seen them ever use any of those moves before. Why would they use them now?
No, the best examples of when it's okay to do it would be like Hogan and Rock at WrestleMania when Hogan pulled out the rock bottom.
When they used each other's,
Yes, it was. You know what? It was just so perfectly. It was the perfect middle finger to each other.
Yeah.
It worked there. Again, it was nothing wrong with it. It's not the greatest match ever, and to slap that moniker on this match is so insulting to Randy Orton and Edge, who are two of the best competitors of their generation.
Yeah.
And this is what you stuck them with. No matter what they do, it's never going to be good enough. And these are the kind of guys who can go out and have one of the best matches you'll ever see, and it's still not going to live up to the hype because nothing can. So I was disappointed in the moniker. I was not disappointed in the match, other than the finishers that they used and the false finishes. Just look, if one spear doesn't do it, the next finish should.
Yeah, I mean, are you going to really tell me that like matches between Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano or Adam Cole are less than this match? I mean, I would take those guys over these two any day of the week.
You know what it screams? It screams indie wrestling. For all the people who like to crack on indie wrestling, this is what a lot of the shows are like.
Yeah.
Guys or girls are hitting these moves trying to pop the crowd. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it adds one thing to it. It doesn't add to me any level of drama.
No.
So, but Orton would emerge victorious. By the way, honorable mention Samoa Joe's commentary on the show. I thought it was really, really good.
He is surprisingly good on commentary. I'll give him that.
I appreciated his shout out to Wendy, AJ Styles' wife.
I missed that. I saw somebody posted online that he did that. I was like, really? Did he really do that? And you just confirmed it for me.
Yeah. Again, he hasn't forgotten it. So that was a nice way to kind of keep that thing alive if you were paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I think that's all that happened on Backlash.
Well, there's one last match.
Hold on.
If you want to call it a match.
Well, let me scroll through and see what you're talking about, because I know I covered.
I think I took some screen caps of it and sent them to you.
Yeah, let me go through my. Oh, there was supposed to be a Raw Tag Team Championship match. That's right. The current reigning and defending tag team champions, the Street Profits, were scheduled to defend their belts against the Viking Raiders.
And I am just going to mute and let you have the floor here.
You know, Mark, you've been a really good friend to me, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to have participated in this show and the time that I've been able to do it. And I pride myself on trying to be able to keep my tongue and not lose my mind. However, in light of the world in which we're living and the challenges that are being faced and that are being brought up, I wanted to address this. I want to say at the outset, I don't have a problem with Street Profits. I loved them in NXT. I loved them before they were the Street Profits in NXT. Spent a lot of time seeing Angelo Dawkins on house shows where he was trying to find who he was and develop his character. So great respect for them. The Viking Raiders, I could do without the name, but I like those guys. They do really good work. Having said that, I'm incredibly angry at this match. And not even that it wasn't a match. I'm incredibly angry that this angle was allowed to take place. The world in which we live right now, we're trying to root out stereotypes, and this is the complete antithesis of what's trying to be done. I don't care if you do hokey crap between the Viking Raiders and the Street Profits. You know what? That's how you see your talent. That's what you think appeals to me. It does not, but you make more money than I do, so you just book and write what you want to write. I guess I'll just continue to be fed crap and I'll eat it. But they took this one just a bit too far. Let's set aside the inane commentary. Let's set aside the inane verbal back and forth about, hey, let's go outside and fight. Oh, we're already outside. Let's set aside the stupidity of the dialogue that was used. I want to focus on one specific aspect, and that is a wrestler that you and I have talked about, Mark, Akira Tozawa. We have enjoyed him. I've enjoyed him on 205 Live. He was beat down pretty hard on the main roster. They sent him back to NXT, where he's had an opportunity to show his true ability, to be appreciated where his talents are. And how do you reintroduce him to the main roster again, who already views him as a jobber, as someone who is just out there to put someone else over? You send him back with, 6 ninjas in addition to him? First of all, laying aside the fact that this is a perfect breakdown of the Civil War scene in Captain America, where you had Iron Man's side and you had Captain America's side, and they run at each other and the fight is on. Really good screen capture Mark took of me. But setting that aside in my fandom of that particular series, why are we still reducing Asian-born competitors to being ninjas and cannon fodder and silliness. Look, I grew up in the 80s. I grew up with Chuck Norris. I love Chuck Norris. I will not step back from that. I've seen all of his movies, where he was fighting, getting POWs out of other camps. I spent a lot of time watching his ninja movies and other ninja movies. American Ninja, which is one of the worst B movies ever, and I loved it. This isn't the 1980s anymore, man. These men deserve to be presented as competitors. You can present them as goofy, but when you put the masks on them and treat them like they're quote-unquote ninjas, it's insulting. It's demeaning. It's not correct. You are marking these individuals as nothing more than comedy the rest of their career. Akira Tozawa deserves better than this. You've sent him to NXT to rehab him, and then you pull this crap out? What do you think it's going to be like the next time he's on NXT and there's a crowd in there? Do you think he's going to get a response? Do you think there's one move he can pull off that anyone's going to give a crap about? Do you think anyone's ever going to see him as being a legitimate competitor? Right now, you put him in with Drake Maverick, I guarantee you the average fan thinks, well, Drake Maverick ought to kick his behind. Drake Maverick is half his size, but the way you presented him, he's nothing. He's a throwaway. He's a jobber. So much for your reclamation project, WWE. Great job. You had a competitor who has value and can be used and make you money. Instead, you turned him into a stereotypical joke. Used his ethnicity, used his heritage as a joke. You put the Street Profits in a position where they don't get over from this. They don't. They didn't defend their belts and maintain them. Their competition, the Viking Raiders, have been presented as complete idiots. Does anyone really believe they're going to beat the Street Profits in basketball just based on size and athletic ability? I'm going to take the Street Profits because I've seen them in the ring. They're far more coordinated. I don't need to see that on TV. You're wasting my time. This is not an episode of WWE Monday Night Raw. This is supposed to be something that's special to the network. And I realize the network only costs $10 a month. You know what, though? I'm looking at this going, do I really want to pay $10 a month, or will I just go ahead and just record NXT off USA? Yes, I got to live through the commercials, but it gets me pondering to think, do I really want to keep doing this? Because it's insulting to my intelligence. With wrestling, I have to suspend my disbelief. This is insulting. This is purposeful. This is along the lines of the December to Dismember several years ago when there was some guy, Paul Heyman, who was let go from the creative shortly after because all the blame was laid in his lap. And wouldn't you know, right before this pay-per-view takes place, that individual, Paul Heyman, was let go from his creative duties. And this is what we get. This, it's not funny. It's not appreciated. I'm not an idiot. Stop treating me like one if you want to retain someone who's been a long time, lifelong fan. And with that, Mark, I shut up.
There's only one other thing that I need to add to this. Masterful job here. But also, like, the Street Profits and the Viking Warriors, or Raiders, whatever the hell they want to call them, they look like complete fools here. You know, I mean, here they're going to war, and they're taking a bowling ball, an axe, shields, golf clubs, and red Solo cups off to battle. Who fights with those things?
Well, in the South, people do throw red Solo cups full of liquid. That does happen, to be fair. But your point is well taken.
Yeah, and again, they're taking on ninjas. Like, really? I mean, I felt like I was, for those of you who maybe aren't as old as us, I felt like I was watching an episode of WMAC Masters, which used to be a television show that was on, I want to say it was like Fox 5 or USA, right after Superstars or All-American Wrestling. It was a silly martial arts show where they had belts that had like little medallions that would would be magnetized onto the belt after they won certain fights. I mean, it was just silly because they go into like this fake backdrop and be like, ninjas attack, and these ninjas would jump in and they'd beat them all up. You know, I mean, I felt like I was watching another episode of that. And you're talking like, God, that was what, 25 years ago or so. I mean, it was silly and not needed. You know, I mean, they did not do anybody. I mean, let alone Akira Tozawa any favors here. It was horrible.
And again, you said it. It's people of our generation era that would recognize that comment. So what does that tell you? It's people at least our age or older writing this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't play well today, man. It doesn't. I'm sorry, but you have to be smarter in your presentation. Because until you root out that type of attitude, you're not fixing the problem. You're just not.
Mm-hmm.
It's not funny. You know, I know Vince, everything's funny to him. I think of the Mark Henry skit. I'll never get over that. And the crap they put him through.
Yeah. And
here's a proud man. And he stuck it out because, you know what? It was a good paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
But I look at people like that who are proud and dignified. And look, wrestling's silly. It's comical. People put themselves in bad places for dumb things to happen to them. I can't remember how many times I've seen Jim Cornette's face shoved into a cake in different promotions, whether it was a Rock and Roll Express, the Fantastic, something in Smoky Mountain.
Sure. Because
that was something to put the heat on him of, oh, look, he can have his face shoved into a cake. You knew it was coming, but it was still funny. And I'm not saying everything has to be PG humor, but in this case, man, it didn't hit, it didn't land, and I'm really surprised WWE's not being called to account more for this.
No, because I think that they exist in their own like reality over here. You know, like not a lot of people hold WWE accountable for much of anything because, you know, they're just that stupid wrestling show. You know, that's and this is why they get that response. You know, I mean, because they put stupid shit like this on here, and you know, for you and I who are sitting around, like I remember when I was younger, sitting around watching the stuff, and like, okay, like my parents would come into the room and like they'd see that and be like, why do you watch this garbage? And you know, like at some point, you know, you got to say like, I don't know, and I've always said that, you know, when wrestling is good, there's nothing better. Yeah, and I'll still stick by that. But when it's bad, good God, is it bad? And this was awful.
You know what? It was awful, and it's tone deaf. And you talked about being in a bubble. You know what, man? Bubbles are bursting.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for Vince to come out and do the whole backstage segment that he did way back in when he was ECW champ and calling.
No.
That segment. I'm just waiting for that to happen again, especially with everything that's going on in the world today.
I would hope. And what's that been? 12 years ago, roughly? It was 08, 07, 08?
Somewhere around there, yeah.
Yeah, it was in that range. And if you're that tone deaf then, and again, I'm not going to speak for people, but I would hope someone would take a hard look and say, you know what, we need to look at how we're presenting people because it does matter. Look, it's mattered before now. It has.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about all the things we go back and watch, and now it's cringe-inducing. We didn't understand. I didn't. My mind did not make the connection.
Mm-hmm.
But at this point, you have to be. How do I say this? You have to be intentional about what you're doing, not just throwing crap against the wall and seeing what sticks.
Mm-hmm.
Because that can put yourself in a very bad place, and it opens you up to questions about things that may or may not be true, but it doesn't matter. It's the tone deafness that's involved. It leads to more questions, more digging, and if they're ready to do that, fine. But yeah, I was highly offended at it. I'm not 10 years old anymore, man. That's not my taste.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I want that for my 10-year-old. I'm just saying that's not my taste. Everything doesn't have to be refined and upper crust, but at least put some effort in. And you can say, well, they got rid of Paul Heyman, so you know they were scrambling. Okay, then what you do is you send the performance out and say, look, just go put on your matches. it's going to be, we're going to do a bland presentation, just do your matches.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been okay.
Yeah, because you know that those two teams are perfectly capable of putting on a decent match.
Yes.
We've seen them wrestle together before. You know, they have good matches in them. There's no need for this.
No, and I'm concerned that more and more the whole cinematic presentation is taking hold. That does concern me.
Mm.
Because I don't think that's what wrestling is meant to be. Because you take away any spontaneity. I mean, it's a good presentation, but what about if they do start doing house shows again, when the kids go, this doesn't look right?
Yeah, this doesn't look like what I see on TV each week.
Mm-hmm, which is supposed to be their big thing. Only call what you can see on TV. Well, yeah. But anyway, I digress. Thank you for letting me rant on that. I appreciate it.
Like I said, you had the floor.
No, thank you.
So I feel bad closing on that note, but I don't have anything else to talk about here. Do you?
Well, you know, I try to find levels of positivity, but beyond Backlash and profiling, there hasn't been a huge amount of stuff going on this week, honestly.
Yeah.
AEW won the Wednesday night ratings war again. If you're interested in that. I would say, though, if you want something that's a little bit more positive or at least thought-provoking, I hope people are watching the Undertaker stuff. I hope they've taken the time.
Those are some really, really great documentaries on the WWE Network. Definitely, I say this a lot. Go out of your way to see this. This is fantastic. Every piece is slightly different from the one before, and it's all great stuff. You know, it's hard to say, like, go out and watch this one versus another one. You know, and from what I understand, the first episode of The Undertaker's Last Ride is debuting on the free version of the WWE Network, coming up either very shortly or it just did. So they're not holding these things back too long, so definitely check them out.
Check those out, and if you really want more of an in-depth take from The Undertaker being interviewed one-on-one, I encourage you to check out the Ringer site on YouTube. Bill Simmons has almost a 2-hour interview up with The Undertaker, and it is as candid will ever be, talking about from feeling like Hulk Hogan set him up about the neck injury at Tuesday in Texas, all the way to the stuff with Brock and what he remembers and what he doesn't remember. And it's really good stuff. He's very open and very honest.
And it's wild just seeing him in this, like, open and honesty, you know, out of character. It's, you know, for someone who's been following The Undertaker as long as we have, like, the guy was so guarded about his character, and his personal life did not, like, carry over into what we saw on TV. I mean, the guy didn't show up for, I mean, he was there for the Hall of Fames, but he was never on camera. You know, anytime that he was out of gimmick, he was not on TV. They've done such an amazing job of shielding this guy's real life from the spectacle that we see on TV every week. You know, it's
and I know we're putting other people over, and that's okay. But if you go listen to him talk about his influences and his level of respect for the business and the people in the business, and like you referenced, him being in the Hall of Fames but not being on camera, that's a man of respect who didn't want to draw away from, but also didn't want to pierce the veil. One of the last bastions of kayfabe, I guess you would say. Mm-hmm. So yeah, check it out if you want to. That's how I want to close as far as from my perspective on positivity, because it'll give you a whole new appreciation for what that man's been through, from his matches to his almost 20 surgeries.
Yeah.
Just what a tough man that is.
Amazing what this guy has gone through in order just to keep going in this sport.
And pay close attention, if you do, about how hard he works just to do one match a year to get his body where it needs to be. And man, my hat's off and ultimate respect to him. So having said that, Mark, that's all I got, man. Thank you for another great episode.
Yeah, this was a good one. And again, you know, for those of you who sat out the entire episode last week, thank you. That thing ended up being over 2 hours and 45 minutes. If you lasted through the whole thing, which I'm glad that you did. I think that we had a lot of really good stuff to say. Just hang with us. There's more to come. Again, we're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, PW Insider Elite, our YouTube channel. Go like, subscribe, give us a 5-star review. Show some love, man. It's our subscriptions have gone up just in the last week, which I'm really glad to say. So just keep supporting us, and we'll keep putting stuff out there. Show some love.
Yep, we appreciate all of our listeners and followers. Thank you so much.
So I guess that's all we've got for tonight. So for Scott Tyson, I am Mark Igwines, thanking all of you for your support. Hey Yo Radio is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The songs used throughout this show are properties of their respective copyright holders.